You usually expect a war to start with the deafening sound of artillery. The cyber war didn't do that. It started with a quiet message on a glowing terminal that simply read, "I'm the creeper, catch me if you can." The year was 1971. A researcher named Bob Thomas was working on the early internet, known as ARPANET, when he wrote an experimental program called Creeper. It wasn't built to cause damage. Thomas was simply testing a theory. He wanted to see if a program could move from one computer to another on its own, leaving that playful message behind. The response came from Ray Tomlinson, the same programmer who invented email. He wrote a counter-program called Reaper. Its sole purpose was to hunt down Creeper across the network and delete it. By writing Reaper, Tomlinson created the world's first software built specifically to target another piece of software. In that single exchange, we got the first computer virus and the very first antivirus. It was effectively a digital game of tag, but the mechanics they proved, that code could travel and act on its own, established the fundamental architecture for every cyber weapon that followed. By the 1980s, the landscape was expanding. Computers were leaving research labs and entering regular offices and homes, vastly increasing the number of potential targets. In 1988, a graduate student named Robert Morris wanted to figure out exactly how big this new network was. To do it, he released a program designed to ping every connected machine and count them. Looking at this map of the 1988 network, you can see how his plan misfired. A coding error forced the worm to replicate exponentially on every machine it encountered. This surge of traffic choked the infrastructure, crashing nearly 10% of all computers connected to the internet. The cleanup took days and cost an estimated $10 million. It also led to Morris becoming the first person convicted under the U.S. Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The Morris worm demonstrated a new reality. In a highly connected environment, local coding errors do not stay local. They become global systemic risks. When the 1990s rolled around, internet usage exploded. People started relying on the web for email, shopping, and banking, putting immense amounts of personal data online. This concentration of value attracted a different kind of attention. In the year 2000, millions of people received a simple email with the subject line, "I love you." Clicking the attached file immediately infected their systems. It spread entirely through social engineering, tricking users into taking an action. Within 10 days, 50 million computers were compromised, resulting in roughly $10 billion in damages. The creator turned out to be a single young programmer in the Philippines. After that, the profile of an attacker shifted. Individual hobbyists were largely replaced by organized syndicates, treating malware as a business model. Operations focused on credit card theft, advanced phishing scams, and massive identity fraud. Programs with names like MyDoom, Sasser, and Conficker flooded corporate networks. IT departments were suddenly fighting well-funded groups dedicated exclusively to stealing financial data. Hacking was no longer a pursuit of curiosity or notoriety. It was a professionalized global engine for generating illicit wealth. In 2010, the threat moved from our hard drives into the physical world. Software evolved into a kinetic weapon. A highly sophisticated piece of malware named Stuxnet was discovered inside an Iranian nuclear enrichment facility. It was engineered to physically spin the facility's centrifuges until they broke apart, all while feeding fake diagnostic data to the operators so they wouldn't hit the emergency stops. Nation-states had entered the chat. In the years that followed, data breaches became geopolitical tools. We saw 3 billion user accounts compromised at Yahoo, the financial records of 147 million Americans exposed at Equifax, and Sony Pictures targeted in direct retaliation for a movie release. Today, the attacks are heavily automated. Syndicates use artificial intelligence to bypass facial recognition and clone voices, while renting out their malware through a business model known as ransomware as a service. The targets are often critical civil infrastructure. In 2021, an attack on the Colonial Pipeline in the U.S. successfully shut down fuel distribution, creating widespread shortages and forcing thousands of cars into lines like these. A year later, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Delhi suffered a massive ransomware attack. The breach paralyzed their servers for weeks, locking down patient records and halting emergency services. What started as a glowing message in 1971 now has the capacity to paralyze hospitals and power grids. The blast radius is expanding. understanding how to defend against it requires a specific framework, which brings us to our next lesson on the foundational defense mechanism known as the CIA triad.